Are values something that you have reflected on for yourself? I have found that identifying and embodying my core values has been an incredibly foundational step toward getting to know myself and deepening my love for myself. I personally feel it's essential to reflect on what is important to you and have those values serve as a North Star toward your decisions and figuring out what truly feels right to you and your soul. This is how we stay in alignment to who we really are and not others' expectations of us. To identify my values, I ask myself four key questions. One, what is deeply important to me? Two, what lights me up in life? Three, what are some times where I was proud of myself and what about those times made it notable? Lastly, I tune in to my 80-year-old self and I consider, what would 80-year-old me wish I had prioritized at this time? It may take time to really reflect on these and consider, is this what I wrote down really that important to me? What I did when I first started identifying my values is I opened the notes app on my phone, wrote some down, and just moved through life, revised as needed. You'll find if you think of something else, like, or you start writing out your list, that there's a lot of overlap, and then you can then categorize those into, I usually don't like a list longer than 6 values. I think around 3 to 6 is a good number. I don't like going beyond 6 because then when you're using these values to guide your decision making and such, it can get a little convoluted when you're saying, like, oh, I have 7 to 10 things that are incredibly important to me. Again, these are supposed to be a North Star, a guide for decision making. To share my top values right now, they are heart centered living, wellness, self development, and purposeful living. I'm thinking about how even those have overlap, and there's different categories under each, which I won't get into right now. Mine are certainly not Bible. They've changed a good amount over the years, but they're all around the same themes, and they all connect to how I can show up better for myself and others in the world. To really deepen values work and this reflection, I think it's incredibly beneficial to reflect on what I'll call your highest self values or your future self values. So it's important to reflect what is deeply important to me right now. And also, if we're in this growth mindset, potentially trying to navigate new circumstances, be a elevated version of yourself. There may be some values that you don't, maybe aren't embodying now, but you find that you highly value and perhaps are looking to make a top priority for you. I think it's important to reflect on those highest self values. And one question that you might want to ask yourself to reflect on what these might be is, if I were to ask people I love or people who know me well what qualities they see in me, reflect on what you would want them to say. Another thing you can do is also think of people you admire and their qualities. And then if there's anything that you aim to take on from them, as a top priority, then you can write those down and decide if that's going to be one of your top values. How do you actually live your values then? You live your values by taking them into account into your decisions. This can be minute day to day decisions or significant life decisions. So I mentioned to you how one of my values is wellness. It has been for a while. So I can say quite confidently that I'm a pretty wellness minded person and I feel I embody this value pretty well. So that doesn't mean that it all comes easily. It's still work and there's still growth areas in this space, which by the way, wellness to me means mental, physical, and spiritual. But there's always a reassessing of is what I'm doing right now in alignment with my future self. And anyways, I have curated my schedule to ensure wellness is a top priority. And this includes morning routine, night routine, strength training, breaks for breath, yoga, meditation, tapping. um, so that's like bigger picture, how I take it into account. If wellness is a top priority, how much time am I allocating to wellness per day, per week? So I have figured that out in a way that feels right to me. I would be excited to chat more about my routines another time, but I don't want to get too much on a tangent. Another wellness related decision that we all have to do is ask, what am I eating today? As a pretty wellness minded person, it comes pretty naturally to me to prioritize unprocessed foods. I cook most of my meals at home, but there's still the decision of like, okay, if I have a week where I just can't cook as much, how often am I getting fast food versus maybe am I financially prioritizing a higher quality meal as opposed to fast food, things like that. So that's just one way that this shows up. But values can show up in so many ways. It's also helped guide my decisions in should I move? If so, where? Should I accept this promotion that is in a geographic location that feels out of alignment versus accepting a lateral transfer in a location that actually excites me and inspires me? So that's how it's shown up for me. I appreciate you listening to a few of my examples. Again, values can help guide every almost every decision. Now, if you feel inclined to explore your values, I invite you to make that space to explore, be curious about yourself, but also be kind and patient. It takes time. There's no deadline for determining your values. It's an ever evolving process throughout life. Remember that identifying your values is a step toward finding your internal compass. And life feels a lot better when you catch yourself in those wandering transitional phases to have something to return to offer you clarity and start heading in the direction, even if there's only so much clarity, but heading in the direction that feels more aligned for you. To assess for the first time or reassess, I invite you to journal on the 4 questions that I mentioned earlier. 1, what is deeply important to you? 2, what genuinely lights you up? 3, what is a time or multiple times that you were proud of yourself and what made those events or situations notable? Lastly, imagine your 80-year-old self and really tune into what that future, more mature, wise version of you would have hoped that you prioritize. at this time.